This morning, I went on the internet and I found this. Now, I'm no stranger to clickbait articles, but this one was pretty much what it said on the tin. Johnny Herbert sounding off about Liam Lawson deserving an Alpha Tauri seat over Daniel Ricciardo. And I quote, I understand that Daniel didn't get a proper go at it before breaking his hand at Zandvoort, but in the time he had on his return, there was no wow factor. And yeah, well, it pissed me off. I'm going to be upfront and say that most that I know about Johnny Herbert is that he was a driver in the 90s and I was vaguely aware of him, and he's a pundit, and he did the iconic McLaren Milk in the Car video, which I still watch regularly when I need a bit of a pick-me-up. It really is a true classic. If you haven't seen it, go watch it now. It's so funny and disgusting. And you're all probably looking at me like I've got two heads and no brain going, how the hell do you not know who Johnny Herbert is? Well, to explain that, I need to sort of explain my journey with F1 over the past 15 or so years. When I started properly keeping up with things, it was back in around 2008, and it involved getting up in the wee hours of a Monday morning to watch the race live on Sky. This is Sky New Zealand, not Sky UK, slightly different. I honestly can't remember if we got practice or qualifying beyond a few highlights that were maybe played twice in the following day. But regardless, I probably wouldn't have watched them because of both inconvenience and being a 22-year-old with a very active social life. Given the option of watching F1 qualifying or going clubbing until 3 in the morning, when I was that age, I would never have not picked the option of making a dick of myself on a table somewhere. But that's all beside the point. We didn't get pre-race or post-race shows. Not that I remember anyway, and I'm sure there's somebody in the comments who would have had Sky Sport back then who knows otherwise, but it was a long time ago, and I was a young adult doing young adult things. The memory's a bit blurry. Then I got a job that meant I had to work on Sundays and Mondays. I moved to another city where the rent was twice what my mortgage was, and we had to cancel the $80 a month Sky subscription. So from then on, I pretty much followed F1 from the periphery via news articles and blogs. Nowadays, we have F1 TV, and it's incredible. But anyway, back to the point. I have never experienced Johnny Herbert as a pundit, ever. When he retired from driving, I lived way up in the mountains where we only had one TV channel and my parents were too poor to afford satellite. Plus, golf was kind of my thing back then anyway. But back to the comments that Herbert wrote in Motorsports magazine that had me grinding my teeth while I sucked up my morning coffee. Teammate Yuki Tsunoda has done a good job too, but I feel Liam already has taken control at Alpha Tauri. For me, he earned a seat in 2024. I don't agree with the decision of Alpha Tauri to bring Daniel Ricciardo back for next year. Is he the future? No, Liam is the future. I understand that Daniel didn't get a proper go at it before breaking his hand at Zandvoort, but in the time he has on his return, there was no wow factor. I'd say there has been with Liam. He has something that looks pretty special. I think it should have been a Lawson-Tsunoda lineup at Alpha Tauri next year. After all, it's a junior team that exists to nurture young talent. And I don't know, I just find them extremely short-sighted comments. I mean, obviously I think Lawson has done a great job, and I think he deserves a seat. He's proven himself to be calm under pressure, a quick learner, and he clearly has a capacity for a lot of growth and development while achieving solid results. Remarkable results, some might say, especially when you consider the circumstances. But there's so much more at play than just, does Liam Lawson deserve a drive next year? And the biggest factor, apart from Honda's determination not to drop their driver clause, is Checo. I feel like I talk about Checo all the time at the moment, but the reality is the most interesting team outcomes all revolve around him. Red Bull needs someone ready to jump into Checo's car when they ultimately ditch him, whether that be at the end of next year or halfway through or even at the end of the season. At some point, it's going to happen, and they have not been hiding it. Red Bull's burned themselves in the past by putting young drivers in that top seat way too quickly, well before they're ready. And feasibly, the only person who's going to be partnering Max when Checo does move on is Daniel. And yeah, I know the driver market's wide open come the end of next year, but look me in the eye and tell me that you think Charles Leclerc actually would want to drive alongside Max in the same car. Like genuinely, in his heart of hearts, and not just a soundbite for the world's media. And I really, really do not see Albon going back to Red Bull willingly. There's no way. I'll eat a pickle if it happens and they make me chuck. And I don't think anyone believes Yuki has a future there unless he ditches the Honda sponsorship. Lawson, see what I said about sticking drivers in a seat until they've got a solid few seasons under their belt. He might swim, but I just don't wish it on him, eh? Like, give him at least 2 years in AT. Just don't put him in that seat, please. So it's Daniel, barring any kind of catastrophic dramas or serious underperformance. Which means he needs to be race ready at all times for top performance, and not just for getting to the end of the race and then getting a nice little pat on the back, well done, thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute. And the best way to do this is to give him a permanent race seat. He also offers 2 other key benefits to Alpha Tauri, should he actually get in that cockpit next year anyway, and not the other one. The first of which isn't exactly rocket science, or race car science, I guess. He's a great person to have on board from a marketing standpoint, and will be a fantastic asset during their rebranding. He's charismatic, he's funny, and he's hot. There's a reason his merch sells out as soon as a new line drops, and it's not thanks to the stalwart fans who all start every single sentence with, "I've been a fan since before the chain was the theme song." Like, no offence or anything, but anyone who's watched Top Gear remembers how annoying it was every time Jeremy said, "I've been a Formula 1 fan for a really long time." Oh god, that probably just lost me 69 of my 71 subscribers, but you know what? It's not like I do this to be YouTube famous or anything. Okay, bringing it back now, bringing it back. We're writing it in, we're writing it in, we're writing it in. Okay. The second reason Daniel Ricciardo is key to Alpha Tauri and Red Bull's long-term plan is his experience. Alpha Tauri is returning to their old model of taking as many parts from Red Bull as possible, and from what I've read, he's already had significant input in the current car despite the limited time he's had in it, and even Yuki said he's been a huge benefit to the team from a development and an experience standpoint. To develop successful juniors, first you need them to be able to actually race and not just poodle around at the back, being lapped by everyone. And I swear, if somebody brings up that one Renault mechanic who had that one quote from like 2 years ago, look, I won't delete your comment because it does help the algorithm, but also like, look, so many other people have said you don't lose your ability to drive overnight. Or in Daniel Ricciardo's case, in 2 years. But this isn't McLaren. He's going into a team that knows how he operates. They allow him autonomy in the car and they listen to and respect his feedback. He can still be rapid. I'm not going to claim to have some kind of insider knowledge on this because I'm just a rando YouTuber from Aotearoa. But I do have a bit of experience in corporate environments and as a team leader. And honestly, I think a chunk of why Ricciardo was so unsuccessful in McLaren actually comes down to their team culture and the micromanagement that seems to permeate it. I don't know, I just get the vibes. It's like, you know, you get offered this really cool job, right? And it pays so much more than what you're getting. And you know somebody there and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, it's so cool and like the culture's really good and we get all these great bonuses and everything." So you take the job and then a week into it, you realize that you f***ed up and you've got to kind of stay there. Otherwise it's a big black mark on your CV. That is what happened to Daniel Ricciardo. So why not twist Williams' arm and offer up the big bucks and put Liam in that seat for a year? Look, Logan Sargent chat notwithstanding, Red Bull can't feasibly actually do that. Well, I mean they could, but it would be a risky as hell move. As far as I know, Dennis Hauger and Zane Maloney are still technically reserve drivers, but I don't recall seeing them at any of the 3 races following Zandvoort. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but usually we see a reserve driver in the garage, or they at least get mentioned, particularly with the F1 TV commentary. They're usually really good at pointing stuff out like that, and I don't recall any mention of them at all. And considering all the drama that's happening at Red Bull at the moment, you would expect to have at least a mention. So Why would Red Bull give up a reserve driver that is a known entity that they know can jump in the car at a moment's notice, go out there and get the job done? Especially if the Perez season play, which by all reports, it very much is. Red Bull needs to spread its eggs across multiple baskets, and by that I mean they need to prepare for multiple eventualities. And at the moment, the best way to do that is to keep the driver lineup at Alpha Tauri as it stands, or risk screwing themselves over. Red Bull aren't taking away a seat from a young up-and-coming driver. They're doing the smart thing for the business and giving them options regardless of how everything shakes out come the 2024 season. And I've talked a bit about future prospects for all of these drivers and what the overall long-term trajectory might look like, despite my short-term take now lying dead on the road. So I'm not going to go over all that again. But fundamentally, Red Bull needs to be looking long-term at who their Verstappen replacement is going to be, and I don't really see them looking outside their own driver pool for that at the moment. To set this person up for success, they need to offer up the right development program and the right car within the F1 circus. And to anyone who thinks that Daniel is too old to be vying for a seat at a top team, I'm just going to point to these guys. So many people seem to have conveniently forgotten about them when it suits their narrative.